twice about it. The idea that Barack Obama might be able to come out of the primary process with the most popular votes, the most states, and the most pledged delegates, earned delegates in effect, and then have superdelegates change the outcome, it's hard to fathom that. It's hard for me to believe that actually happened. But I honestly believe the Democratic Party would rip apart if that happened. I think the idea that changing the outcome based on party insiders, which is the way a lot of people would look at it, would be so divisive and so disruptive. Having said that, it's certainly possible. And the other thing you have to look out for is Florida and Michigan, because both those states had primaries that the Democratic National Committee disallowed delegates for. And what Hillary Clinton's going to do if she were to keep going and if she were to go into the convention, she would say we should seat these delegates because she won those primaries. That's another thing. The Obama people, again, would look at that with great bitterness if the idea of changing the rules, in their view, changes the outcome. And Hillary people say it's not changing the rules. The rules allow for a contest in a convention over seat delegates, and therefore the rules were to contemplate this. But it's such a divisive idea. I think in the end, if this is a conventional prediction, and our conventional predictions are wrong this year, so don't take too much from it. But I do think that Obama comes out of the primary process with a substantial, meaningful lead in pledged delegates. Ultimately, party officials and DNC members and so forth, want to follow their voters. They do. I don't think they're gonna. I think they're going to go his direction ultimately if that's the outcome we come from. I just think that ultimately it's too divisive without, an alternative.
I think that's right where we get back to that reform conversation. The distance between the democratic process this year and a sort of representative winner takes all system is probably unacceptably far. And I think one possible outcome of this year is a real hard thinking inside the Democratic Party about what kind of a primary system they want to have, and whether it's a national primary that they end up with, or are we thinking of the wide variance of primary states and caucus states, for example, that the variance of results between those two types of systems is one of the great stories of this election from the point of view of how has Obama managed to put together what looks like a front-running campaign after not winning California, New York, Florida, Michigan. These are, if you could define the modern, Democratic Party, you would say it's largely based on those states, and yet he has not won a single one of the major Democratic states, and is looking at a situation where he may well be the party's nominee. And so I think, that's something that we're all going to have to evaluate when this is all over and done with. But it's pretty remarkable that you can have a nominee who couldn't manage to win California and New Jersey and New York, and we'll see, maybe he'll win Ohio and Texas, which would put to rest some of those issues about big states. Are we going to die or not? Newspapers. And do you specifically mean the Post or more broadly American newspapers? Well, these are tough times for the newspaper business. There's no question. Right now, you have a situation where both the Los Angeles Times, the New York Times, and the Washington Post will all be offering buyouts to their newsroom employees, all at the exact same time. I think that might be unprecedented, actually, and that's all occurring right now. The LA Times, as some of you may know, was a great national newspaper. First, it was bought by the Tribune Company. Now the Tribune Company has been bought by a rather sharp-talking billionaire named Sam Zell, who has already signaled crystal clear that he's not interested in the kind of journalism, broadly speaking, that the LA Times has organized itself to produce over the years. He came to Washington this week to meet with the bureau, people in the Washington bureau of the LA Times and the Chicago Tribune and the other papers that he owns now. And he looked at them and he wagged his finger and he said, what are you doing to justify your existence economically? So, you know, it's a tough prospect. With that said, I also think that if you think about this in terms of the future of American journalism, and are specifically thinking about the print newspaper aspect of it, arguably, you know, the future is brighter, even brighter than it ever was before. And that's a little bit of what I was trying to get at. We have this incredible opportunity to actually produce stuff for you, the reader, that's twice as good as it was even 10 or 15 years ago. Why is that? Because the democratization of information is tremendous, and it's real time. And we can do something like the fact checker every single day, because all that information is out there, because the power and the logic of the internet requires candidates to be more responsive and more detailed about their positions on issues than they ever were before. They need to address more people in more ways than ever before, and if we can figure out how to deal with it, that arguably will end up being good for democracy. It will certainly end up being good for journalism, because it's a faster and more efficient way to get the information bubbling to the top. It's you know, the whole sort of Wikipedia world out there. The power of collective thinking is pretty extraordinary if you can find a way to harness it. It puts you as a consumer of news and information much more in the driver's seat. It gives you the chance to interact with your government and with politicians in a way that if we figure it out, and we might not figure it out, by the way, that's the real possibility that, you know, that sort of keeps us awake at night. It just might well be that some new forms of media, some new ways of organizing to produce this journalism will emerge out of the ashes of many of these newspapers. Right now, the very single biggest new news driver of traffic online is Google. Google News is by far the dominant producer of news on the internet. But you know what? They don't produce any news. They don't produce any journalism. They're not, in the lingo of the internet, a content provider. What do? They have built a sophisticated and super secret algorithm that aggregates news from all over the web. And you know what it does? It destroys the value out of your morning newspaper every single day. They steal our content, and sometimes they steal the sort of lame, imitative version of our content versus that. The Washington Post might have a unique piece of investigative reporting on the front page of the paper about Senator John McCain. But you might click on Google, which is where millions of people will look, rather than the Washington Post website, and it might be a wire service version of that that doesn't really have all the original reporting, the original material. It might be, you know, a really short little item saying, you know, Senator so-and-so was outraged to find out about these revelations about Senator McCain, rather than the original material. And so we have to figure this out pretty quickly before it all evaporates.